Good evening, everyone. I'm Michael Dillon Welch, and welcome to SoulFood Poetry Night. First, a big thank you to SoulFood for always hosting us every month. We're now in our 10th year of readings here every month, so I'm very grateful to SoulFood for having us. To get us started tonight, I thought I would read a poem by E. Cummings. Maggie and Millie and Molly and May went down to the beach to play one day, and Maggie discovered a shell that sang so sweetly she couldn't remember her troubles, and Millie befriended a stranded star whose rays 5 languid fingers were, and Molly was chased by a horrible thing which raced sideways while blowing bubbles, and May came home with a smooth round stone, as small as a world and as large as a lone. For whatever we lose, like a you or a me, it's always ourselves we find in the sea. Tonight we have our 2 featured readers, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll have our open mic. But we have a small change tonight, and that is we have a younger reader who's going to read first, and then she's got to leave and go to bed. So we'll have one reader from our open mic reading first, and this is my daughter, Sarah Welch.
The first poem we're going to read is a renge called A Winter's Tale that I wrote with Daddy.
And renge is a 2-person poem with 6 verses. Morning light, a trace of snow on the neighbor's creche.
Granddad steals a gumdrop from the gingerbread house.
Crowded mall, the eyes of carolers all aglow.
Mistletoe hung above the mantel, empty stocking.
Sail flags fluttering in the tree lot.
Bronze sunset, the first Christmas lights turn on. These are a few haiku that I've written. The sunlight shining down on the rushing river water. Beavers building dams. Small paws run down slope. Wind ruffles silky fur. Wet marshlands, the soft paddle of a duckling's feet. Walking through the forest, my father starts singing. Still water, a pebble breaks its silence. Cherry blossoms. My father's camera clicks again. A gentle breeze. I tuck a cherry blossom into my hair. Rocky shore. A swift wind raises our kite. Vanishing greenery. The click of the tracks gives way to iron buildings. The last poem I'm going to read is a longer poem that I wrote by myself. Homework, homework everywhere. Once again I pull my hair. Stressful, stressful, please be done. I want to go out and have some fun. If I'd gone out to have some fun, imagine the things I could have done. I could have run, jumped, leapt in the air, or I could have braided my brother's hair. Imagine the joy I had seen when I saw my homework was just a dream. I leaped out of bed, punched a fist in the air, and then I noticed the worksheets on my chair. Homework, homework everywhere. Once again I pull my hair. Stressful, stressful, please be done. I want to go out and have some fun.
Thank you, Sarah. Sarah's favorite vacation spot is Japan. The first of our 2 featured readers tonight is Diane April. She teaches at Spalding University's MFA program, in writing program, and also at Hugo House. She's published 4 books and edited several, most recently The Book from Larkspur Press last year, a letter set hand-printed anthology of fine art photographs with poems by 20 writers. In 2012, she was an Artist Trust Fellow and has also received a Hedgebrook residency, 2 Pushcart nominations, and a Team Pulitzer Prize as a journalist in Louisville, Kentucky. Her This I Believe essay on silence can be read or heard in her voice online, and I highly recommend searching for that. Look for This I Believe and Diane's name. She produced a reading series for 5 years at the Jazz Club she and her husband co-owned in Louisville. She is also a board member for Eastside Rights. Please welcome Diane April.
Got my timer here. So. I did have my timer set up, but it's just disappeared. So, shoot, there it is. The vagaries of cell phones. I want to say, first of all, thank you, Michael, for inviting me here. I'm really happy to be here. And I want to also thank Anne for accepting my invitation to read with me up here. And I love her work and love the way she reads, so I know that's going to be fun. I also want to tell you that I usually wear contacts that allow me to read and to see with distance, but I have a sty in my eye right now, so I'm wearing reading glasses. So if I'm a little bit awkward, it's because I don't usually wear these glasses. But I did make up a poem in honor of my sty. My name is Di. I have a sty. In my right eye, I don't know why. I want to start tonight with a poem about family. I think we all write poetry from our obsessions, and I'm sort of obsessed with the concept of family, the reality of family, other people's families, families I read about, friends' families, and, of course, especially my own family. I teach at an MFA program, and I do a lot of teaching of memoir, and I'm very interested in hearing people's stories, the way they decide to put together their life details in a narrative. So I want to read you a poem. There's another obsession that surfaces in this poem, and that is I'm very curious about the way sometimes we hear words incorrectly, and we make some other meaning out of them. An example of it is, I don't know if any of you have read a book by Frank McCourt's brother, whose name I can't think of, but it's a memoir, and it's called A Monk Swimming. And it's actually the way he heard the prayer, the Hail Mary prayer, when he was growing up. And there's a line in there where it says, "Blessed are you amongst women." And he thought it was a monk swimming. So he titled his memoir with that. And I think it's I think it's really funny. So I'll start by reading a poem about family. If I can find it. Yeah. As it was mentioned, I'm originally from Louisville, Kentucky, and generations of my family have been from Louisville, Kentucky, and it was only 6 years ago that I moved to Washington State, and it was a big change. So I've become even more interested in some of my ancestors, and I particularly am interested in my grandfather, who I never knew, who died very young due to a bad heart and also drinking too much. He sold coal and ice. He distributed it at a time when those were like the necessities to keep you warm in the winter and keep your food fresh in the summer. This is based on a story my mom used to tell a lot. It's called "My Memory of My Mother remembering her father. Fire and ice, coal by the bucket load, giant cubes hung on hooks, slung over shoulders, bald and dark-eyed man, wiry, fierce, undone by the water of life, by what some call vice, ice in his veins, fire kindling his words, dime and didn't pay. Her brother's chorus, their backs bare, jogging down fire escapes to the horse-drawn truck. His ruddy knuckles hug a pencil stub, jot the blue-lined pad. Dime and didn't pay. A man ought not to play God with a neighbor's need, next week's fine, or next after next. My mother watched her father's fingers, misheard her brother's words, and turned their freighted phrase to allegory. Diamond didn't pay. Diamond. Thrilled by the name, she conjured a man of mystery, mastery, many facets. Who, after all, gets away with not paying? Her father paid in spades, dead at 56, body burnt out, veins half-hearted. A schoolgirl, she chisels an image, freezes it in time. A darkened parlor, his knuckles white with heat, fear, the tent whooshing in, out, the only hook a grim one. They took his truck to the cleaners, the boys, her brothers. No coal smudge left, no slivers or rhyme, no balanced book, no diamond. Was she chagrined to learn the remarkable Mr. Diamond was only former family shorthand for accounts receivable, a way to remember who owed how much? She'd heard it wrong. Her agile brain, trying to make sense of it, made myth of it. She often told the story, laughing at her gaffe. But the tale itself is her estate, like a DNA strand entangling me. The knot of it, how the mind can play with you, how things aren't always what you think they are, how any cold, hard fact in the face of human need is the seed of something more. So I moved from Kentucky 6 years ago. I'd virtually lived there my entire life. My husband had lived a few places, Tennessee, Colorado, but mostly was from Louisville too. While we were there, we had a jazz club, as Michael mentioned, and our son got very interested in music, particularly in jazz, and he played the saxophone, but actually started out on the clarinet. So I want to read you a poem that kind of grew out of that experience of him learning to play. It's called A Changing Thing. The garden looks newborn from where I sit, though down below, where it grows, basil shoots unfold like hobbled spines or wind-wrecked umbrellas. Foxglove blooms too, half down a moss-green stalk, fire-pink petals trumpeting like hungry mouths, like the flared bell of a clarinet. Earlier today, the boy's notes drifted room to room, scent-like, no boundaries to his tune. Gardens grow that way too, improvised, raw edge ambition, angling for heights, no limit, sky, sun, feeding tuft and tendril. A garden is a changing thing, like boyhood chords on a clarinet or rifts among friends, the evolution of love, each line a lesson, each untidy, striving riff, a half-bent green shoot longing for completion. Okay, as I mentioned, I moved. That involved loss, and loss is something that I write about a lot. It's always been an important theme in my life. I guess it is in all of ours. So I'm also interested in the way that sometimes the big losses, the losses that we grapple with inside of ourselves, we come to understand through kind of smaller, predictable, less serious losses. So this next poem that I want to read to you, I want to dedicate to Anne, because her husband is a dentist, and this has sort of a dental theme to it. If I can find it. Maybe some of you can identify with this. Losing a tooth. You don't miss it, not the way you miss the life you left behind, the one with the curving country road that lost its edge more than once, broken bites of macadam, puzzle pieces hurtling down hillsides of sycamore and ash to Floyd's Fork, a river unfurling. Coyote, deer, and lightning bugs on summer nights lit up bedrock bluffs with flashes china white. Acts of going missing can be visceral. Deep roots yanked, 1, 2, as you breathe in and out, languid behind your laughing mask. To resist is a losing battle. Forceps tug, deliver emptiness, a raw-edged hollow, where as far back as you can recall, something solid stood, bone familiar, as near as the spear of your tongue, the pulse of every swallow. Okay, now I would like to read a poem from a book, actually from a literary journal that is part of the university where I teach. And at some point, one of our faculty who teaches poetry was named the Poet Laureate of Kentucky. And so there was a special issue devoted to her, and we all wrote for it, as well as taking other people's poetry. And this is what I wrote. It's based on a memory of a family vacation. Family road trip, summer 1953. At 4, I feared highway tunnels, black as cold coffee and ominous, carved into earth for us to plow our Chevy through. Ponderous, they opened to darkness, like the swinging door of a wood stove, deep as the stove's hollow, its blackened chambers. If a horn blows in a tunnel, my brother warned, its walls collapse. One hand shading his eyes, taut awning against the California sun. He cupped the other to his lips, and knowing better, spat 4 words into my ear. We all will die. That summer, we rode tunnels hip to hip within a sleek sedan, my shoulders stiff, his hand hovering above the horn. We lived, but even now, knowing what I know of how a burro holds the world at bay, and having packed away my fear of dark places, I still can't shake my brother's warning. It smolders, charred wood in an ashy cavern. One random act, ill-timed, a world falling apart. Let's see. I'm going to read one more, and then what we're going to do is switch back and forth a couple of times in our reading. So Louisville is a river town. It's on the Ohio River, and in 1937, in January, there was something called the Great Ohio River Flood, which affected many Midwestern towns, including Louisville, and it was devastating. And it was in January, so it was cold, and it was a very miserable time for a lot of people, including my mother's family, who lived kind of near the river and had to eventually escape their house from a third-floor window. So at the time, just a few months before that flood in the fall, my grandfather died, and my mother's sister was sexually assaulted, and that led to many sad events in her life, including a really bad case of OCD in which she washed her hands constantly, ended up getting shock treatments and even a lobotomy. But to her dying day, she insisted that nothing had happened, even though there was plenty of evidence that it had. So what I want to read to you now is a found poem, which means it's a poem that actually I didn't write. I gathered it from other people's words. And these are her words that I taped during the hours and hours and hours of tapes that I have accumulated of her. She died the year that I moved here. So it starts out just with this other line from her, and this is kind of the recurring explanation she gave. She'd say, she had taken a ride with someone, a stranger. I mean, nothing happened. I'd be lying on the man if I said something happened. So this poem is called What Happened After Nothing Happened, in her voice. And from then on, oh, everything was dirty. Now, like I say, I didn't see anything. Nothing happened. The man did not. I was shocked, but it's what my brother said. You were a hothouse plant. Thank you. I'll be back.
I'll give our next reader a brief introduction, and then they will alternate their reading. Our second reader is Ann Teplick, who's a Seattle poet, playwright, and prose writer. She's also a teaching artist, and what she does in her teaching amazes me. How she manages all this is amazing. She writes with youth at the Child Study Treatment Center, the Washington State Psychiatric Hospital, through Pongo Teen Writing, which is mostly in prisons, at Seattle Children's Hospital through Writers in the Schools, and at Coyote Central, an after-school arts program for middle schools. She's received funding from Artist Trust, Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, For Culture, and the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators. She's currently working on a collection of poems snapped into fractions, is that right? That reflects her 14 years of writing poetry with youth in psychiatric hospitals. Please welcome Ann Teplick.
Kind of like stools. Michael, thank you. Diane, thank you. And SoulFood, thank you. This is a great place. So the last 14 years I've been working with writing poetry with kids in psychiatric hospitals. And before that, wrote a bit with some youth in King County Juvenile Detention. The stories I've heard are really difficult. I've never thought I could write about them in a collage-y way or talk about them. I don't really talk about my work, but I decided about a year ago that I needed to write some of this to help with my process. So I'm working on a collection, and I'm calling it Snapped into Fractions because many of the kids I work with are snapped into fractions, and at times I feel like I'm snapped into fractions. I think we all probably do. So I'm going to read some of these snapped into fraction poems, and then Diane will come up again, and then I'm going to read a lighter nature. So these lives are so complex. I always think of hoping that all of these young people are blessed. Often they're come from fractured families. Often they have no families, and I just think of blessings. So this is a poem called Blessing Complexity. when the voices in your head slit neuron after neuron into phrase that crave AWOL, when your days are a cesspool, when your skin unzips a little too riddled, fissured, chafed, when lava creeps from lymph, when you dangle the guppies, then swallow, when mahalo's your tongue, when you pray for the hooligan, rogue, when you steal your toes into foam, how far will you go? This ocean of rope, razor, and pill. When marimba, xylophone, vibraphone, when you snap into fractions, neck at the cervical, chest at thoracic, low back at lumbar, pelvic at sacral, carpals, patellas, tarsals. When tsetse flies panic, data that's frantic, the scent of hemlock, that's when you scatter. That's when you gather your halogen, tungsten, bolder than incandescence. When 2,000 hours equals your lifelong. When extra blessings, the perennial vest of citron, acacia, and goldenrod nest you. When peacocks are the halos that bless you. When blessings, blessings, blessings. So this is called Love Poem number 107, and it's a prose poem, and here it is. I walk through the doors of the public school, the iron gate at Western State Hospital, the nurses' station at Children's Hospital, the metal detectors at King County Juvenile, the stairwell to the hospice wing, to Purell, sign in, high five, ask for the key to the bathroom, computer room, room to Xerox poems and more poems, collate, celebrate, whisk to our writing space, a waddle of desks, tables stapled to the floor, corduroy pillows, a bed with rails, machines that beep, digital numbers that screech their crimson, screech their wires, IVs, whiteboard, instructions scribbled like hieroglyphics. And there you are. Tubes through ports, through noses, neck brace, body brace, drowsy from medication, freckled and wide-eyed for discharge, the crash of self-harm. The cuts on your arms, your legs, like jags, like X marks the spot, here and here and here and here. Bruises that fuse the brain's mutiny. Pint me the oxygen, carbon dioxide, level of energy, empathy, heat from chemotherapy, rehab, dialysis, psychosis, diseases I've never heard of, names with 13 syllables that crack veneers, that seep, spill, drench the yoke of grief from chins, necks, chests, torso scarred from lifting hearts, livers, kidneys onto the cart for pathology, and the rabbits are ashen. But there you are, a tangle of questions, tongues that click teeth, fingernails ripped into zigzags, lopsided grin, bald heads, cheeks that dream they are rosy. And there you are, poised to write, wrangle the simile, double dutch the repetition, gather the assonance, dissonance, toss them like dice, spicy, your loves, your secrets, your fears, what you've done to others, what they've done to you, the finch you will not hold, the cinnamon you'd crawl inside of, call home, bold with all that is broken. And there you are, the opal Moldavite sunstone. So a lot of the young people I work with have experienced gun violence, And this is called Dear Heart. Each time a bullet I ice into glacial fray, gray-lipped ash. Where is the manual map? I call you, I text you, I love you. 72 times a minute, 100,000 times a day, 3,600,000 times a year, 2.5 billion times a lifetime. Gun, unblessing. The mantle, the closet, beneath the bed, nested in the top drawer with lavender and plum-flowered underwear, photos of your mother kissing your nose. Your kitty has run away. Muzzle, barrel, hammer, trigger. Get a grip, will you? Steel and ceramic, synthetics like polymer, plastic. Each time a bullet, I scan the statistics. Goleta Postal, Red Lake, Minnesota, Trolley Square, Virginia Tech, Hartford Beer, Aurora's Dark Night Rising, Columbine, Cafe Racer, Clackamas, Sandy Hook, Marysville, Pilchuck. Scan the tracks, scan my wither. I am 8 years old and shivering through the layers of an onion, wrung dry, gnawing to choke the code, eyes like snowdrift soaked in brick. I call you, I text you, I love you. 11 ounces on average, 2,000 gallons through 60,000 miles of vessels each day. Each time a bullet, heart, lung, throat, frontal lobe. I bleed through ears, steer to terra firma, but the more I try, the more I am shoreless. Atrium, Latin for entrance hall, ventricle, Latin for little belly. Did you know that the French physician René Laennec invented the stethoscope in 1816 for hearkening, autophony, and listening? So what are we missing? When a famous person commits suicide, we all fall apart. When Robin Williams committed suicide, we all fell apart. People I worked with, people I know, myself. So this is for him. He's a famous person, but many, many others who are not famous fall apart, take their lives. It's a fragile world, but it's a world that I still feel hopeful for. Metal detector. After Robin Williams, there is no shelter, bomb or cyclone, cellar of roots, rutabaga and parsnip to refuge you. My bones flake to blood moths, wings that feign to 10, 9, 8. Fairy dust caked and rusted, I know what comes next. The spring-loaded fins of UXOs, landmines, grenades, and missiles. We tiptoe a stupor of questions, wipe the salt from our necks. This man who pulled us through our own badlands of cockroach and scar, by laughing, we cannot laugh too. So I have 3 more short poems, and this is about a young person I worked with at Western for about 2 years, whose stories are really hard to hold, and whose story still haunts me, a beautiful young man, and I'm calling this You Are Not a Broken Record. Porcelain boy, rooster hair, the crow of rose and tangerine, pastels that glow your fracture, the rattle of words hawked into the alley's 4 a.m. phlegm of infection, dissecting the story of stabbing the dog, then stabbing again, thrown into the prison of replay, The plastic film with magnetic coating, the cobalt volume doping, combined with double to up your output. Porcelain boy, you are not a broken record, belted, choked. Stigma stapled to your forehead like a post-it, a hear ye, refusal to truant persecution, make heads or tails of Beelzebub, who lounges in your frontal, temporal, parietal lobes in his smoking jacket, blood-patent leather, with scabs and scat, buttons the size of cheekbones that crimp you into thirds, slip you into the mail slot, special delivery, collapsed for clemency, then feather forgiveness to the shyness and open sky of you, porcelain boy. I work with lots of young people that have eating disorders, and this is called desecration. Once you climbed into the womb where persimmons bloomed their ginger, trellised themselves into pies. Once you were the baker, now you weigh 60 pounds. Clove that drills its heat through feeding tubes, chews you to skeleton. Once you were triathlon, now your gears have swelled, asphalt splashed. When will you drag out of bed and open the shades that slave to fade you? The queen of screamers, hallucinations that butcher, crave the perfect puncture, your temples massacre, a bloody biochemistry, to thee you sing. This is the last of the snapped into fraction poems that I will read, and this is called Her Defiance. Her defiance is a barbed wire tetanus with rust, is the crust of a canker, the lunge of a panther when you tell her you've had it with suffering. Enough is enough. When you tell her she needs to screw her head onto her neck, not backwards or sidewards, but forwards. Is the scar in the swath of cotton? Is the venom steam? Is the cream with the maraschino cherry? Is the Rainier, Royal Anne, and gold? Is preserved in brine? Is the sulfur dioxide, calcium chloride? Is the FD&C Red 40? Is the cocktail Molotov, the petrol bomb, the poor man's grenade? Is the urban guerrilla just wants to be loved? Thank you so much.
I told you she has great poems and reads beautifully. I'm going to read, in honor of Michael, 2 haiku. I know he's the haiku king, so. Fall day. Our decks fill with leaves. Wild cards in a poker game. We risk all to play. Bulb planting. I'm told it's too late, but on this harsh winter night, I dig deep, gambling. I like to garden. Where I live now, I've sort of traded a river for a lake. I live in Kirkland, and I have a view of Lake Washington, and I feel blessed by it every day just because the views change so much. It never looks the same. But one day I woke up and it was absolutely still, and the light was such that what I saw on the other side in Seattle was reflected perfectly in the water, a mirror image. And I just stared at it for a long time. It was so beautiful. And this is what came out of that. The lake is a mirror today, a parallel earth, a clone, an underwater world, a parallax submerged. Houses on the far shore stand upside down and right side up, looking glass reflections, Alice-like, yet not so different from the real world, where we residents stare into one another, transparent reflections of ourselves. Water now turns pink, purple, gray, steel blue, as two worlds float ceaselessly, completely still, cloud to cloud, house to house, dock to dock, morning light to morning light. On the shore, on the way to her school bus, a child skips a rock. A whole world upends and sends a message. It's never what you think. Okay, so this is a poem that probably any of you who've ever written poetry have tried. It's an acrostic poem. And by that, it's the first letter of each line of the poem spells out the subject matter. And this one is an acrostic that's my name, my first name and last name, Diane April. So it's sort of a selfie poem. So I'll just hold up my finger each time I get to the first letter of each line. Dappled, as Hopkins would say, irresistibly pied and motley. Maybe I am too many people. Girl, writer, woman, wife, mother, friend. No persona precisely who I am. Not one can capture the elusive gist and marrow, root and crux of me. All I want, perhaps, is wings, rough, tough owl feathers, iridescent arms, lifting me from my storied self, airborne into sweet elsewhere. I think Michael mentioned a book, I know Michael mentioned in my intro, a book that I edited and contributed to. I just want to read you what I wrote for this book. It was a compilation of unbelievably beautiful photographs of books that had been taken apart and put back together again, and then photographed in a studio. And, you know, often they took on totally different meaning and looked like something other than a book. So what we did was we asked the 20 writers to just write whatever they wanted, poetry, prose, that they were inspired to write based on looking at these photographs. So they were books that were taken apart and put back together. So I wrote this piece. It's called Deconstructing a Book. And it begins with a definition of the word ravel, which I learned in doing this, and that's why I love to write, is that I'm always learning things in the process. Ravel has several definitions, and one of them is the opposite of what it is. So think about that. Ravel, unravel, untwist, entangle, complicate, clarify by separating the aspects of. Books break down over time. They come to life as organic matter, wood pulped to paper, pigment turned to ink, bones of beasts to glue. Over time, they fox, they fade. Sunlight, breath, fingertips nudge pages toward demise. But behind them, in sheaves, they leave traces of their origins, the sweet, the sour, the decaying scent of time. She smelled of lilac the first time she read to me from the old yellowed book. That's how I recall it. She spent the morning cutting stems, placing them in a porcelain pitcher. When she opened the book and showed me the poem by William Wordsworth, I couldn't have known who he was, what a poem was, what language meant would come to mean. She read the poem aloud, sunlight searing the room, breath bathing the book. Thumb touching tongue before turning the page, each action a step toward extinction. Over the years, she read the poem often, day, night, spring, fall, until it felt etched to my flesh. Classic Wordsworth, a gentleman on a hike in the countryside encounters a girl, 8 years old, and strikes up a conversation. The poem's title, We Are Seven, refers to the girl's argument that her 2 dead siblings are still a part of her family, of who she is. The dead don't leave us, but persist, no less real for being unseen. The gentleman tries to persuade her that there are only 5 now, the others buried, gone, no longer countable. She ignores his math, insisting, we are 7. It was an odd poem for a healthy young mother to read to her child of 4 or 5. Years later, when she died, too young, me still in my 20s, it was the Wordsworth poem that called me back to the house with the sofa where we read it. I searched until I found the book in the back of a closet, found her too, her DNA on the page, knowing it was there, though I couldn't see it. To preserve a dying book, first deconstruct it. Remove its covers, unlace stitches, loosen leaves. Take note of stains and tears. When your dismantling is done, breathe in the remains. Commit to memory. Dust, light, lilac, a girl, what's left of her mother, their raveling bond. Thank you.
So I grew up in Philadelphia, and I love Motown music. And Motown music put me through some really hard times in my family of origin. So I'm writing some Motown poems. And most of them are prose poems. So this is, I have 4 short ones to read, and here's the first. Dear Motown, I was 14 when you tornadoed me, fired me into wasabi, messed up my hair, messed up my hormones, any shakes of restraint, made me want to peel my shyness, reel every boy into a slow, slow dance. Refinance words into hieroglyphics, and specifically, what do I do with this heart that snapped every inch of grit from my ribs? 14 and Marvin Gaye moaned, let's get it on, crimson that might as well have been arson, that sliced through organs, lungs, liver, skin, but mostly the stuff beneath my belly button. 14 and you crashed me from 30,000 feet, my carnal trying to bail through fog that flipped the order of sea and horizon. Smoky, sultry, you really got a hold on me. Confusing because who knew what to do first, second, or third? A pendulum from girl to woman, girl again. Those days, safer to memorize the legwork of the Temptations than worry about the sensation of a first kiss. So I was, and I'm still obsessed with Soul Train and Don Cornelius. So this is a prose poem called Soul Train, and I watched Soul Train forever and ever, and I love Don Cornelius. So, Soul Train, number 1. Dear Don Cornelius, I'm a Philly girl, a Motown girl, an R&B with plenty of soul and sparks that electron the fuchsia of my restlessness. Choose me. I want to dance the line, Want a sunny side up to Stevie Wonder and Donna Summer and Jerry Butler and Martha's Vandellas. I want a funky chicken and bump and bus stop in the streets of your Chicago, now Hollywood studio, in my baby doll aquamarine. Choose me. I've never missed an episode, and that includes the flu, the mumps, concussions, rushes to the ER for shellfish allergies, a rat attack even. I will not let you down. I will wash dishes for airfare. I will curl my hair. I will shave my legs and underarms, and my mother will shit a pig. I will bring you a mess of Hershey's Kisses. Dear Don Cornelius, say that you will. 2, let's get it on. It's as if he's slathered in raspberry jam, ricotta cheese, the way these bees tease him with hips that switch from come and get me, baby, till you're going to have to work for it. Flirty at 13, I wanted to swim that honeycomb too. Breaststroke, backstroke, butterfly, into whatever tizzied my neurons. He is checkered in browns and blacks, ski cap, like water lilies that floats these caramel beauties closer and closer until they are one hum of a heat wave. I paint my skin, I want to be delicious too. Tease my hair and sway, 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 till there's nothing wrong with me loving you. Until he finds my pinky and gentles me from the periphery into the vocals of peacock velvet where there is no beating around the bush. 3, doing it to death. The Supreme Mary Wilson chiffons in sunglow that vines her toes, and I pretend I'm one of the sisters, blister to my mother's closet and slip into her tangerine jumpsuit, stuff my bra with socks. I'm back the moment that she begs Don to dance the Soul Train line, and his baritone blushes like Tweety Bird Starlove, all 6'2" of him, black jacket, black tie, black shirt with the oversized polka dots, this ooze of Cupid. I'm back, and James Brown mushrooms the roof with thunder atomic, and all that's left is moon and musk. We dancers thread the line in a wave of florals and zigzaggy claps. Don hails the citrus and tips his head. I mouth the word me, and Mary weeps on the sidelines as Don and I shuffle with shoe pearl and funk. 4, rock steady. What it is, what it is, what it is, our Saturday night ritual. We've been smoking too much weed and the couch littered with Breyer's ice cream, butterscotch crimpets and ruffles have ridges waiting for Aretha. It's 12:59 a.m., the three of us, ponytailed, pigtailed, slumped into an amoeba of elbows and thighs beneath the brindle blanket with the brindle dog, with the curly Q fur that smells like Prel from her bath that afternoon. The clock chimes 1 o'clock, and TSOP, the sound of Philly, the vocals of the 3 Degrees, the Soul Train theme, flares the room on tracks that swerve over mountains and mesa, scraper and factory, jolts us onto our feet, where we go in bikinis and wait for Don's bottomless Soul Train, the hippest trip in America. Now everything's okay. Aretha in white pants and jacket, Aretha with rust-colored afro, cheeks like sequins, head to the heavens, holding the high notes for hell to come home, her Freddie steady, tenacity, grit of a woman that I want to be. So that's Soul Train. I kind of had a vivid imagination that it's really kind of fun growing up and getting rid of all the other hard stuff. So this is the 3rd poem. So 2 more Motown poems. Someone tries to shoot the tires. Pop. It's 12:45 a.m. and someone tries to shoot the tires. The 8 of us stuffed into the 66 Camaro, a siren of lava, wax like a mirror, body, wheel, hubcap. August heat, thick enough to slice with a serrated knife. Someone tries to shoot the tires and the windows are down and our hair tangles to the ceiling as we scream on North Philly's Broad Street as Wilson Pickett wails the midnight hour and his love comes tumbling down. I'm on Ray's lap, his rectangle glasses needle my shoulder, his hands around my waist, his black OT like a scrubby on my neck, strapped in a sandwich between Emmy and June. The tiny miracles of being 15, tank top, mini skirt, which is denim, hoop earrings the size of lampshades, draw like a chainsaw, working bazooka bubble gum. It snap and collapse over my mouth and nose. Someone tries to shoot the tires, so we screech past the 7-Eleven with its greens and reds and the Korean restaurant, curtains opaled metallic, the Vietnamese nail salon, but who cares about cuticles anyway? Row houses with families clustered on the stoop, some with boarded up windows, some with boombox, some with R&B, and some trying to raise the double scoop of Italian ice from dripping its pistachio down hands and arms to elbows, and we want some of that too. But someone tries to shoot the tires, and we're on the lam, and the Isley Brothers croon the airwaves with This Old Heart of Mine, and I pine for the boy I've left behind. Last poem, it's called Philly. Friday after Friday, our payday for the grunt of 12th grade, the biology of ants in our pants, a chronology where early admissions hung like spoons from thunderheads, where rows after rows bled the reds of adrenaline, where crows yelled in code from clotheslines, get out of here already, this city of brotherly love, where thumb to thumb we drummed the miles from Philly to Boston, Philly to Madison, Philly to Oakland. Friday after Friday, we gushed into the Mustang, green as a kiwi, girly like curtsies. We rounded the corner like some appendage of Andretti. 17 and death was out of the question, our obsession, Diana Ross, running those tinny vocals off the cliff, no way to rush love. At least that's what her mama said. So we cursed it and flailed it, would hang for it, love, to make sense of everything our boyfriends were pushing. Friday after Friday to the dead-end street, the creek, once hushed, now trashed, with coffee cups, beer bottles, socks, brakes screeched, no seatbelts, jolt forward, jolt back, unpack the matches, the pipe and the hash, the pretzels, the thin minted cookies, light years from Girl Scouts, from badges, unpack the oath to never stop singing our Motown sisters, even while kissing Philly goodbye. Her skyline, a mudslide, industrial smile of R&B funk, and the soul that had saved us, danced us, and made us defy our mamas too. Thank you.
Poems of music and loss. Thank you. And also hope. Both of our featured readers do you both have books here? Okay. But Diane has a book here, if you'd like to check that out. If you haven't yet signed up for our open mic, sign-up sheet is right there. We'll take a short break, but before we do that, I want to invite you to the Redmond Association of Spoken Word. It has this monthly meeting, usually on the last Friday of each month, but this month it's a week early, and so it's meeting tomorrow night, and our featured reader is Michael Shine, and we have a mix of poets, fiction writers, nonfiction. Last month we had a storyteller. Michael Shine's latest book is about the Lincoln assassination, so it's a prose book, but he'll also be reading some of his poetry. So please come to that. It's at the Old Redmond Schoolhouse Community Center, 7 p.m. tomorrow night. So please come, and we have an open mic for that as well. And I also want to remind you of our next reading here at SoulFood next month on September 17. Our featured readers are Michael Hickey and Kathleen Flanagan, and they're both former poets laureate of a sort. Michael Hickey was the poet populist of Seattle a few years ago, and Kathleen Flanagan was the state poet laureate a few years ago. So please come back next month for that reading, plus the open mic. Thanks again to Anne and Diane. Let's take a break, get something to eat, and we'll get back started with the open mic fairly soon. And if you haven't signed up, please do. And don't forget to answer the question of the month beside your name if you've not done that. The question is, where was your favorite vacation? All right, back in a few minutes.